about the posts talking about 5,070 plus hours being too much. Isn't 40 too much too? I just hope that people on here are serious about understanding that 40-hour work weeks are way too much too. We should really be advocating for less than 20 hours BC. I feel like some people really underestimate how much better they would be with them. Ah well, it has been like this, so we have to accept it. Well, you don't have to accept it. It's just people allow it to dominate their lives when they could push back against the system. Collectively now, thanks to things like social media, anything over 20 hours should be optional. And there isn't much stopping people from pushing the system to provide them the resources to be able to edit. Forgot to add that they must be paid like 40 work weeks so people don't feel like they need to work another job. Reminds me of Parkinson's law. Work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Most of my experience and observations in office admin roles show that if you were to add everything you accomplished within a week, it usually doesn't go beyond 20 hours of actual work. I always thought it was, but I do think 30 hours a week is still in the comfortable range and gives you enough leisure time for other stuff, and that's if the job isn't too stressful. Also, lunch breaks should always be paid, and 6 weeks paid vacation time at least per year. Sick days should not be limited either. My dad used to say that the best way to kill time was to work it to death. He's dead now. The 40-hour work week was designed back when the husband would go to work all week, and his wife would do household chores, cook, etc. It is an outdated system that is still widely used to this day. Despite society's manners having changed so drastically, you can barely compare the two. We can hope to do something against it and change the system. But personally, from my POV, you would need a very large movement to pull something of this scale of. This all falls back on unions, and I'm baffled how y'all don't know this. How did we get 40 hours as FTE? Unions fought for it. Up in a union and advocate for the 20-hour week. It'll take decades, but it took over 100 years to get 40 hours. Understand that this system is entrenched and generally worldwide and probably implemented in most industries on some levels. All levels of government have business hours that's based on 40 hours of accessibility to a human. What you're asking for is doable, but it'll take decades of advocacy. Join a union. Start talking about it with your members. 40-hour weeks. OSHA. Child labor laws. Dedicated breaks. None of that happened immediately. But it did happen. Through the unions. In my industry in the UK, a 3,537-hour working week, not including an unpaid hour-long lunch break, is fairly standard. Although above a certain level, all contracts have a clause in saying the 37-hour week is a nominal amount and employees are expected to work extra hours as the business needs it. There's talk about 6 hours workdays, 30 hours week, or 4-day work weeks, 32 hours week. We'll see what comes of that. But anything over 40 is overtime. 70 hours weeks isn't even legal here. I worked in a factory. I worked 3 12-hour shifts back to back and was done for the week. Had 4 days off. In retrospect, it was pretty good. But for those 3 days you are done after you get off. Now I work 5 8-hour shifts, and I generally find myself more tired than when I work the 3 12s. I believe the normal should be 32 hours honestly. I was spoiled with the 4 days off and thought that only 2 days off on the weekend wasn't too bad. Until I had to do it, and it sucks. Saturday is spent preparing for the upcoming week, and part of Sunday is cleaning, and then finally relaxing, only to have the looming dread of work the next day hanging over me. That sounds nice and all, But have any of you ever tried running your own business and only working a few hours a day, 20 hours per week? Let me know how that works for you. 4 days a week would been enough. Then you actually got a nice weekend. We've been promised since the 50s that improvements in efficiency, technology and management would result in shorter workdays than our predecessors. The Jetsons cartoon showed George Jetson working just 2 hours a week while computers did the rest. Maybe it was parody. Maybe it was an honest vision. Who knows? Instead, technology and automation benefit the business but, crucially, not the employees. Rather than reducing the time taken to complete work, it allows for more work to be crammed into the same working hours. Management remains the same. Business still operates with bloated, inefficient clevels who do little useful work for enormous pay. The pandemic proved the entire management level could be removed from the equation and the business would continue to function. Meanwhile, the indentured servants who still toil at the low levels have to cope with ever increasing workloads for no increase in pay, and often reduced overall pay due to inflation, all the while counting down the minutes until they can clock out. 40-hour work weeks were hard fought for, so those in power punished us a different way. Alright, I know it's anti-work, but absolutely nothing will get done on 20 hours of work per week. There's anti-work and then just being lazy and entitled. Yes, 40 hours a week is too much. Full-time is 45 hours a week in some countries. If we're not careful, we will end up with a higher number of hours per week being considered full time, and 40 will become the new part-time. This depends on the position and the demand and the supply. You cannot compare an office worker to a truck driver, or a waitress to a doctor. Therefore, you cannot say this many hours is long or short. I work 25 hours a week. Unfortunately, I am going to have to get a second job. But I will say 25 is a sweet spot. 5 hours a day MF, not bad. I work as a corpo. Not like cutthroat crazy person. Just up the corporate ladder. 32 hours a week is all I need to get all my work done. Like easily. We should really be advocating for less than 20 hours. Not sure if I'd agree with this. We have to keep in mind that pretty much everything in our lives relies on other people putting in the time to do something which will, directly benefit us. I'd say we should push for a 4-day work week. 32 hours. Instead. That way there is enough overlap between different kinds of sectors. So charge the same for half production as you do for full production? This would destroy competitive and technological advantage of the US and any country that would adopt this, not to mention the manufacturing and assembly jobs. It would also destroy any small company because now they have double the expenses to maintain their staff. People will get more time but probably have weirder hours as well. Shifts would be half the time and the coming and goings would be constant. Not to mention work turnover, setting up and breaking down would take about an hour, so that's 3 hours of productivity that the company could rely on. Housing is always going to be the issue. While you can produce more goods with less labor as things get more efficient, and therefore costs can go down. Inflation adjusted to track lower average working hours on average. Land is pretty much finite. So if you work 20 hours a week, you'll always end up competing against people working 40 or up hours a week to buy or rent a conveniently located home. I have autism, and I can easily get overstimulated just by being in class for 1 hour. 20-hour work weeks would be a godsend.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.